It never meant as much as it does right now.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme. I've covered the Capitals for the last 3 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. And as always, I want to thank you for making this your first listen of the day. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about the Capitals as they prepare for game number 5 Thursday night. It never meant as much as it does right now, and the Capitals need to dig deep and bring it. Do they have what it takes? I'll talk about that a bit later. I'll talk about Logan Thompson can't do it all. Listen, we need the defense to step up. We need the offense to step up. Thompson is doing what he can do. Now, to be clear here, he hasn't been perfect, but we need to see a whole lot more from the rest of the team. A bit later, I'll talk about the Martin Fehervary factor. It's interesting that you don't normally point to a defender having such a huge impact, but I think the impact of having Martin Fehervary not in the lineup has been felt, and ultimately what has put the Capitals' blue line in disarray. But just to get it going here, talking about not good enough. I spoke about that in yesterday's show that, still around the Capitals players and the coaches. They're like, we know we need to be better. We're not scared. We can bring it in game number 5. Not good enough. The Capitals will need to make the most of their opportunities because it's not okay if they win, or it would be really nice if they win on Thursday. They have got to win Thursday in game number 5, or it's curtains for this year's Capitals season. So let's dive into that in the first segment here. Let's not sugarcoat it. The Capitals are getting outclassed by the Hurricanes. Game 4, a 5-2 loss that felt worse than the score indicated. The hard part watching the game is it just felt like the Capitals couldn't get anything going. That they are playing a hockey team that's really good, but they're a really good hockey team, and it's a game of hockey. Why can they not figure out what the Hurricanes are doing? And even if they can figure it out, why can't they overcome? And right now, it doesn't feel like a second round playoff series. It feels like Carolina is pulling the Capitals apart piece by piece. And it was difficult to start the series at Cap One Arena, where the Hurricanes took one of those games. The Capitals took one of the games, but now the last 2 games have gone out to Lenovo Center. And now the Capitals are in a position where they absolutely must win. And the Caps aren't just losing. They're hanging on by their fingertips, hoping anything breaks their way. But, that is a Hail Mary pass. That is a last-ditch effort. That this is playoff hockey, and you shouldn't hope to get lucky. You shouldn't hope that things go your way. What you should demonstrate is that your team deserves to be there. Because like I said in yesterday's show, if somehow the Capitals do find a way to make it past this series, well, it's not going to be like, well, we finally got past the Hurricanes. No, the next team is going to be even that much more difficult. Now, the frustration around the team is palpable. And when Dylan Strome breaks his stick in frustration on the bench, he's speaking for every fan in DC who's watching this series slip away with a lot of optimism, I got to say, in this season. And, as one of the things I said slightly hyperbolically is that, don't etch the Capitals' name in the side of the Stanley Cup. Is there was a lot of people drinking the Capitals Kool-Aid and a feel-good story about how the Capitals didn't have real high hopes this season, that the moves they made last summer weren't going to really pay off. But surprise, surprise, the Capitals won the Metro. They won the Eastern Conference, and everything that they've worked for is going to slip away unless they can win in game number 5. When Spencer Carberry is left furrowing his brow on the bench, it's clear this team knows it's getting beat. And the more frustrating part, I think, for Spencer Carberry as well, and I've sung his praises all year, is I don't think he has a plan to beat this. I think that Rod Brindamore's system with the Carolina Hurricanes is impenetrable for the Capitals. Do I think the Capitals got lucky a bit that they even won a game in the series? Kinda. I mean, because if you can't duplicate that kind of success, well, that success to me seems a bit hollow. So that's the frustrating part. And the team knows it's getting beat. The effort is there, but the execution is not. And that's not good enough in the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Again, my belief is still, and I'm not wavering, I'm not acquiescing, that it's the Stanley Cup final or bust, meaning that if they don't at least make it to the Stanley Cup final round, then I think that, it's good that the Capitals made it past the first round, something they hadn't done since 2018, but not enough. So let's break it down here. The Capitals started hot again in game 4 and looked like they had something going. Then a couple shifts, they couldn't get the puck out, and boom, it's in the back of their net. Carbon copy, just duplicating game after game in this series against the Hurricanes. Shane Gostisbehere opens up the scoring, and you could feel the air come out of the team. That, they were trying, I think, out of the gate to try hard, but it wasn't enough. The biggest turning point, a 4-minute power play, a gift after Martinook high-sticked Chychrun, and the Caps didn't just waste it, they made it easy for Carolina. Disorganized, sluggish, zero zone entries, that's inexcusable at this level. And, that's my big thing here is that if Thursday night, say that is it, and we're wrapping up, and I'm going to talk to you about everything that's going to, went wrong in the season and what they should do this summer, is what do they do? That things that were laid out on paper seem so good. A lot of the players putting up career numbers, this team exceeding expectations. Where do you turn? That's the hard part. So, if the Capitals season, in fact, is over on Thursday, I'm left with far more questions than answers. If someone asks me to summarize the 24-25 season, the high points, you know what it is? It's Alex Ovechkin beating Gretzky. And that's it. Because anything else that they've accomplished this season feels hollow to me. You won the Metro. Great. You're done in the second round. You won the Eastern Conference. Great. What does that mean? It means absolutely nothing. And if you want to take a look at the Winnipeg Jets, see how they're floundering to an extent as well. President's Trophy winning, it doesn't mean anything. Regular season stats don't matter. And, that's something that is often said, but I think that really needs to get driven home is that, in a sport of what have you done for me lately, regular season stats, I know it sounds cliche, mean zero. That some of the teams that, kind of backed into victory to make it into the playoffs excel. And the Capitals, who, like I rattled off, have accomplished a lot of things, could be done in the second round. So the biggest takeaway, the Caps aren't just losing on the scoreboard, they're losing their identity. The Hurricanes have imposed their will, and right now, the Capitals look like a team without the answers. And I don't think that's real debatable. I don't think that, they've finally figured it out. I did have that feeling when the Capitals won a game. If you watch or listen to the show, I felt like, hey, they figured it out. They found a way to win a game against the Carolina Hurricanes. So either Rod Brindamore and the Hurricanes adjusted, or it was just fluke. It was a fluke. The Capitals got lucky. I guess I'm not entirely sure. You can't just win a playoff series hoping the planets align. You have to take control, and the Capitals just aren't doing that. Taking control. And you know what? This is the game. And I know that there's a lot of different ways to look at this. It's game 5. There's no room for error. Do the Capitals try to go out and play a skilled game? Do they go out and try to do something a little bit more risky and play a physical game? And when I say risky, the chance of getting penalized, but you see the impact of Tom Wilson, game 4 against the Canadiens, how it shifted the series. And wouldn't that be something if there was something like that up the Capitals' sleeve? I know that's a bit of a long shot at this point. So is it a skilled game? Is it a physical game? It's a tough question for Spencer Carberry and his coaching staff to figure out. And even if they lay out the best plan, sometimes the best laid plans go to waste. They could say, hey, guys, let's gather around. We're going to look at the film. This is what we got to do better here and there and everywhere. But when the Capitals continue to go back into that fight or flight mode that we see them going into when Carolina really pours it on, it's not going to be easy. The Capitals need to dig deep, the deepest they've dug all season, to try to do the unthinkable. Pull out a win in game number 5. They've got to do it or it's over. And let's worry about everything else after that. They have no other choice. They have no hope of trying to think about who's going to be playing in the next round. They are fighting for their playoff lives. As Capitals fans, let's hope they can do the unthinkable and win in game number 5 and worry about the rest after that. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about the impact of Martin Fehervary. It's interesting. Oftentimes you point to big goal scorers, big netminders. Not often you point to blue liners as having a big impact. I think the impact of Martin Fehervary's loss has been huge on this team. What is the impact of Martin Fehervary? I'll discuss straight ahead. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help you keep feeling fuller longer. Now, personally, I love the no shells variety. It's the perfect grab and go snack for busy days. Whether I'm snacking at my desk on a road trip or just need a quick protein boost, they're always my go-to snack. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. Get snacking and get cracking with a snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You can find me over on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. So in this next segment here, we're talking about the impact of Martin Fehervary and how the impact of him is noticeable that when he's not in the lineup. And one of the things that has been said about the Capitals blue line is that there is just a glut of talent, that maybe they could even start trading some of the defenders within the organization. I'm talking Hershey, I'm talking Stingrays, prospects, those kind of things. But when Martin Fehervary got injured, the depth was put to the test. Who did they go with? It was Dylan McIlrath and Alexeyev. They decided to go with Alexeyev, a guy who, the Capitals have a lot of high hopes surrounding. It's going to be his year next year. He's going to really knock it out. Hasn't been the case. He was a guy that was put in the cryogenic deep freeze for a lion's share of the season, thought out, and has, underperformed, I guess I'm going to say. So we're going to talk about the depth on the Capitals blue line, but more specifically about the Fehervary factor and how he factors into the Capitals' success when he's in the lineup. So let's stop pretending the blue line is fine without Martin Fehervary. It's something that not a lot of people are talking about, but when you take a look at the advanced analytics, you see how having him in the lineup is beneficial for the Caps. His absence is massive, and it might be the silent killer of the Capitals' postseason. You don't notice defensemen until they're gone, and boy, do we notice it now. Carberry keeps rolling out the same 6 guys, and I'm like, really? This is what we're doing? And in Game 5, what do we do? Do we do something crazy and try put Dylan McIlrath, who in his own words is not the greatest, fastest skater? Do we put Ethan Bear, who kind of killed it for Hershey this year? A lot of questions. Alexeyev, to me, seems a bit of a liability. The numbers don't lie. When he's on ice, Alexeyev, that is, the Capitals are underwater. There's no two ways about it. He's trying, no question, but he's not ready for this kind of pressure, and he's playing like it. It's time to consider a shakeup. And, I think that's where we're at. Is it going to be Ethan Bear? Is it going to be Dylan McIlrath? It is a difficult question how to proceed. If you are going and leaning into a physical approach, then I think that, of course, Dylan McIlrath is your guy. If you're looking for more of a skilled defender with not as much of a physical flair, I think you could go with Ethan Bear. So that's a difficult. So whether it's Ethan Bear or Dylan McIlrath, someone else at least deserves a shot. So let's break it down here. Fehervary out with a torn meniscus, and the PK hasn't been the same without him. I don't think that's really up for dispute. He was the shot blocker, 150 blocks on the season, and reliable in high danger situations. Would I say that Martin Fehervary alone could save the series? Probably not. I mean, I think that is an easy thing to try when your team is failing, to go, had it not been for this guy or that guy, we would be doing really, really well. And all things considered, the team has everyone for the most part. Sonny Milano, who hasn't played in a long time. Marty Fehervary is out. TJ Oshie, Nick Backstrom, these kind of guys. But we knew all that. I'm talking about the core nucleus of the team is out there. Not to diminish what Marty Fehervary means to this team. I think it could change. I think it could make the team better, but I still think, like the numbers point to, his impact is felt. And at the end of the day, the Capitals would be that much better with him in the lineup. Alexeyev, he's getting buried. 31% of the scoring chances with him on the ice. That is a disaster in playoff hockey. So I think that, that's how it's come to this. I think that to a certain extent, you put Alexeyev out there, he's a liability. We understand that. And some people have pointed to the Dylan McIlrath, given his, not being the greatest skater could be a liability, but we've got to try something. There's no wiggle room here. There's not like we can try something. The lineups are in on Thursday night. Who are we going to go with? Carberry benched him for the entire third period in game 4. Alexeyev, that says it all. Why is he even still in the lineup? The numbers must point to Ethan Bear not being good enough, or Dylan McIlrath, his skating be a little bit inept, that maybe that's the position. But now the Capitals need to make a decision. Spencer Carberry needs to make a decision that we know for certain that Alexeyev is just not cutting it. We could go into and say, hey, maybe he's going to find his game in game 5. Facepalm. That is not the right tactic to take. What they really need to do is make a decision. If they're going with more of a skilled game, I would go with Ethan Bear. If they're going to lean into physicality, then I would go with Dylan McIlrath. I think if you're asking me right now, I would lean into a physical game. Because that is one of the key attributes of this Capitals team that we haven't seen a lot of. I'm talking Tom Wilson engaged, like we saw him in the series against the Canadiens. Tom Wilson, where are you? I know that he's, his sarcasm is off the charts, but we need to see people just really finishing their checks, really leaning into a physical game to give the Capitals an advantage. Marty Fehervary would be huge. He blocks a lot of shots, 150 blocks on the season to be exact, that the Capitals are sorely missing that. But they don't have a choice. They can't, there's no one else behind door number 2 and 3. You open door number 2. Hi, it's Ethan Bear. Open door number 3. Hey there, it's Dylan McIlrath. That's it. So unless they expect Pierre-Luc Dubois to reprise his role as a defender, I'm kidding here, of course, that is the position that they're in. So the biggest takeaway here, Fehervary's absence is no longer just a side note. It's central to this series. Carolina smells blood on the back end. If the Caps don't adjust and find stability on defense, the series ends Thursday. That is it. So it's some tough questions, and I imagine Spencer Carberry and his assistants probably aren't going to get a lot of sleep between now and Thursday. I would have a hard time sleeping. How are you going to do this? That, everything that surrounded Spencer Carberry, Jack Adams finalist, all this and that, the other thing, a lot of that is going to be put into question, to a certain extent, if the Capitals don't deliver here. So some tough questions for the Capitals to have to answer. Marty Fehervary is not an option. We wish that he was. I just went over why it's advantageous to have him in the lineup, but those are your 2 options. But that is what draws into question the Capitals' blue line. We are told the whole season that there's so much talent. Well, when it was put to test, Alexeyev was the chosen guy, and he hasn't been up for the task. Something for the Capitals to address in the offseason that, you go out, you make one move at the trade deadline, crossing your fingers and toes and hoping it works. They need to be more aggressive, whether it's guys sitting in wait in Hershey, whether it's healthy scratches. I don't ever, never, ever want to be in this position again. All right, so coming up here after the break, Logan Thompson cannot do it all. He's done his fair share, has not been perfect himself, but we cannot expect Logan Thompson to win this series. He can be a key ingredient, but we need the offense. We need the defense to step up. I'll discuss straight ahead. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. So in this final segment, we're talking about the impact of netminding in this series. And there was a scary moment starting round one. Who was going to be the guy in net? As Logan Thompson was injured, missed the latter part of the season. Were we going to go into the playoffs with Chucky Lindgren? There was a lot of trepidation, a lot of unsureness about it. But Logan Thompson dropped into the cockpit in game number one, played well. Then there was the injury scares, this and that. I got my bell rung, even though I'm grabbing at my leg. That Logan Thompson, I think, has made it close for the Capitals. He has kept the Capitals in the fight. On the other side, Frederik Andersen has been stellar. But with that said, he has not been truly tested. What's the difference? Vacillate here quickly. The Carolina peppers the opposing netminder with shots. The Capitals, I think, want to do that. They just can't do that. But at the end of the day, the offense needs to step up. The defense needs to step up. LT cannot do it all. Let's dive into that here. Let's give Logan Thompson his flowers. He's playing his heart out, and I really think that he is. He came back from injury, jumped into a pressure cooker in the second round, and he's been solid. But it's not enough, because when the guy at the other end is Frederik Andersen, you need more than a solid. You need elite. And, the thing of it is, do I think LT is elite? I do. And, if you wanted to switch chairs, say have Frederik Andersen put on a Capitals jersey and vice versa, that it would be interesting. But, the big thing is there, I think that the Capitals need to get shots on net. And who knows where this series would go if they were able to do that. And I understand sitting back here in my chair, it's easy to say, get more shots on net. Just go out there and do it. I understand that the systems that Carolina has laid out make it difficult, but the Capitals need to get through to help save Logan Thompson so he's not under duress, to save him from these odd man breaks, these kind of things. So let's break it down here. Thompson ranks third in goals against, 2.45, and second in save percentage at 918 among goalies with at least 5 starts. Those are great numbers. And through a line share of the season, he was one of the finalists. At least he wasn't, but the rumor mill was that he was going to be one of the finalists as for the Vezina, along with Connor Hellebuck. And we've heard different names associated with that as well. Andersen, though, first in goals against, 1.41, first in saves, 935. He's better, and he's not being tested. And, I think that Frederik Andersen's got to love playing in Carolina because, he's tested, but he's not tested as often as Logan Thompson is. And, I think Logan Thompson, and this isn't about face. It's not like this has been the MO of the Capitals all season, or they wouldn't have even made it to the playoffs. They wouldn't have won the Metro. It's just that the Carolina Hurricanes are a unique team that really are stifling. They break down any offense and they just start going in the other direction. So that is the difficult part. The Capitals are going to have to do that. They're not going to, airing Logan Thompson out to dry, having him peppered with shots, having these odd man breaks. The Capitals are going to be done. I mean, Logan Thompson has made a valiant effort, but he can only do so much. So the biggest takeaway is Thompson has kept the Capitals afloat, but he's not getting help. If the Capitals want to survive Game 5, they have to pepper Andersen early and often, or this series ends and the Hurricanes move on. That's what we're up against. And there's zero time to adjust on the fly. We're at the point of the series that they have to win, in the literal sense, or it is over. So a lot of questions. We're hoping that the defense steps up and that we can finally generate some offense. Because to be honest with you, if the Capitals could win a game, I'm not going to say they're going to win the series, but they could make it a bit more interesting, shall we say. What the Capitals did, they did find a way to beat the Carolina Hurricanes in this series, so they're not unbeatable, but they've got to find a way to do it again. I'm not saying anything too novel here. I get that, but it's rubber meets the road on Thursday. So that's a tough thing. You take a look at it. I think the players, at least what they tell the press, the writers, the beat writers, all this kind of stuff, that they're not panicking. That we know we didn't play well, but we've got what it takes within this locker room. We really need to see that manifest. That in fact that is the case. And you take a look at it. I think playing that full 60-minute game, and I know that sounds cliche, but if the Capitals could get on the board first, I think that could be an absolute game changer for the Capitals. They would just have to find a way to continue to maintain. And sometimes that is something that gives them a bit of fits here. I don't think the Capitals, I don't think that this game 5 is unwinnable. I think that, if you watch the series, it seems improbable, but at the end of the day, I still think that there is a chance, a remote chance, that the Capitals can in fact win game number 5. They need to dig deep. You know that it is going to be every player engaged. That's what we're hoping for anyway. And let's hope the Capitals can do the absolute unthinkable and win game number 5 and worry about the rest after that. Now, listen, I understand that that's really optimistic, but that is our hope right now. I don't want to go into game number 5 just thinking they're going to lose. It's over. I started feeling that way, but this is our last chance as Capitals fans to dig deep, rally around this team, and hope they can, in fact, do the unthinkable and pull a rabbit out of their hat, and pick up a big win in game number 5. All right. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are what makes this show successful. When you're done here, head on over to Locked On NHL, as they have you covered 5 days a week, available wherever you find your podcasts and on YouTube. All right. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.